Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes of public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. The show is produced by the POCUA and is founded upon its Soundness Initiative. This episode is sponsored by the Finest Service Organization, a provider of line of duty death loan protection through many of our POCUA institutions. Now, part 2 of Gaining a Fire Edge with Dave Robertson.
It was just time for me, the Canadian boy, to go home.
Yeah.
The story with that is I accepted a job with the Nova Scotia Firefighter School. I think it was either December or January before COVID. Got rid of my house and all that kind of stuff, and pulled out of Concord, California. I think it was March 18th or 19th. I think it was March 19th. So yeah, so I made my way all the way to Halifax, Nova Scotia.
That's a long trip.
It was a long drive, long drive.
I've been to Halifax in Nova Scotia. Fortunately, I didn't have to drive there, but that's a long trip.
And so I packed everything. I've got my life basically all set up, and I was supposed to get a trailer hitch and a trailer. Well, with the COVID thing, everything went haywire.
Yeah.
Right? Shipping and all that kind of stuff went haywire. They couldn't get a trailer hitch, and they couldn't find a trailer like the day that I was supposed to get all this done. I'm like, okay, now what do I do? Yeah. So I got a giant roof rack. I had a Volkswagen Jetta and a giant roof rack, and the roof rack was so big that it almost looked like another Jetta had been upended and put on top of the roof of my car. And then my car was so stacked with stuff that I remember walking towards it from the back, and the back tires were off just a little bit from the weight. So I made my way all the way to Halifax that way. That school closed down because of COVID. Everything was going to be 2 weeks initially, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're closing down for 2 weeks. Let's see what happens. And then, of course, we all know what happened.
And now we're closing out for 2 years.
Yes. Yeah. So made my way back to my parents in my little town in Ontario, and started working at a great little academy just outside of Toronto. And they took advantage of the second shutdown to close down and do some restoration stuff with their academy. So they shut down. And so I made my way west to be closer to my daughter, closer to my fiance and her family. The amazing Lorraine, my fiance. I still get floored when I think about how lucky I am. And that's why I ended up in BC again. Part of it was proximity. I liked the mountains, and I saw that British Columbia really didn't have any other academies out here. There are a couple. There's one that's associated with college. There's one small private, and there's a larger one. But the larger one we'll say it's lost its way. So I just saw a hole that needed to be filled, where I could actually do my thing, and be in the great town of Kelowna, close to Vancouver.
Yeah, I've as long as it's a beautiful area up there, as long as you don't become a Canucks fan on me. But yeah, I've been up in that area, not in your particular town, but I've been in Vancouver and in British Columbia a few times, and it is a beautiful, beautiful area, without a doubt. To kind of segue, back to the coaching part, and try not to track myself off on stories and hockey and everything else. You kind of touched on this a little bit. You mentioned in your website that you take an approach most firefighter career coaches don't. What is you kind of let in a little bit on your approach. You could certainly elaborate on that. But specifically, what are some of the common mistakes that some of the coaches out there do make?
Well, I kind of tipped my hat a little bit, first of all, for part of that answer in the importance of acknowledging that there's some coaches out there. I mean, there's no standard for coaching, right?
Right.
For the practical stuff, for the training stuff, you have had to have been hired by a fire department, had a number of years. You have to either get and then eventually maintain a number of certifications. Some states require you to have instructor certifications as well to teach anything at all. So there's a standard out there. Coaching, the standard is basically you need to go to Staples and get your business card printed. And that's, and now I'm a coach, right?
I got one
So,
of those. Can I be a coach?
I lost mine. I had a prop right here.
Yeah.
That would have been perfect.
That's all right. You
So,
still got the axe. You're good.
I got the axe. Look, I really am a firefighter.
Yeah. Yeah, there's helmets, there's an axe, nobody can just buy those. Yeah, go ahead.
So those are the people who I think are consciously they're just not doing a good job, right? They know what they're doing, in my opinion. You did ask me, what do I do that's different? What's my approach? I get into here and I get into here. I don't hand you a sheet of paper with interview questions. I don't do, we're going to do our 2 hours of Zoom interview prep. I do a number of things. My process, and I'll try to give it to you fairly quickly, Ken.
Yeah.
And
for those of you just on the audio and not on the video, what Dave was pointing to was his head and his heart. Please continue.
Oh, thank you. Yes, audio. I forgot about that. Yes,
that's okay. I encourage people to listen to the audio and watch the video because you can't get enough of public
nobody
safety
wants to
talk
see
radio.
this ugly mug. That's for sure.
What I always say, but about myself. But continue. Sorry about that.
Beat you to it. I get into their head and I get into their heart, and I really kind of help them. Number one, is this really, 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 with a capital R, what you want to do? You have got to get into this for passion, not because, as we used to say in the fire service, not because you get to wear the cool pants. Right. And there's a lot of young, impressionable people that they want to wear the cool pants. And you can hear it in their answers in interviews when the only thing that they can really say when they get asked, why do you want to do this job? Well, I want to help people. And I think they do. I'm not saying that that's false, but it's not a deep authenticity, right? It's not a passion. It's not a purpose. It's not a vocation. So the approach that I take is we start with resume. It's like, well, yeah, of course you start with resume. Well, no, actually the resume work is not give me your stuff, we're going to drop it into a template. It's we start working at why do you have that on there? Was that important? What did you get out of it? What projects did you do? They end up coming away from our resume workshop with a deep understanding of what they've done. Because most of the time they don't know what they've really done. It's just like, here's my work experience, June 2018 to July 2020. Like, and it's just, and a lot of times it's a cut and paste job description, the ones really very short sidebar, the ones that are currently firefighters trying to get a fire job, and they'll give me 5 bullet points of what a firefighter does. I'm like, I'm the chief. I'm looking at your resume. I know what we do. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you
I would
get out
hope
of it?
so.
Yeah. So we move from there because the resume is kind of mechanical. It's just your experience and your life and work experience. And then we get into the cover letter, and the cover letter is where we start dipping our toes into why are you here? Because the cover letter should be, in my opinion, it is your first opportunity to be in the chief's office. Of course, I mean that metaphorically, but to be in the chief's office and start answering the question, why do you want this job with my department? I don't need a rehash of your resume in sentence form. So the cover letter is a challenge for most people because it's the first time they're really getting into their head and getting into their heart. I do something that's very unusual. I think I'm the only one that does it. I do a dig deep questionnaire. It's about 40 questions. I tell them to take their time, tell them to reach out to friends if they get stuck, to ask them some of these tough questions. they all know what they want, right? They all know what's in the distance. That's my destination, is
Right.
uniform and a badge. They rarely know where they're starting from. And so you can't really start a journey if you don't know where your starting point is, right? So the Dig Deep questionnaire gets even deeper into the passion driven stuff. Out of all of that, we start building the narrative for what's going to happen in the interview room. This leads into one of the common mistakes I think other coaches make. You know, we say in the fire service, and I would imagine it's the same in first response for police and EMS and other first response vocations. The job is won or lost in the interview chair, right? Okay, that's good. What do I do? Well, you really should practice, right? Or, we leave them to their own devices and they go on to Google. And the first question is, here's interview questions. What have you been doing to prepare for this job? Oh my God. Right?
I'm bored just listening to you read the question.
Exactly. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? No, this is not what happens in most. There are still fire departments that do that. But even then, typically when you're getting faced with the typical interview format, which is 2 chiefs, maybe 3, and someone from HR, typically, we don't care what the answers are. This is the trick. We don't care. It's how are you answering?
Yeah.
Are you leaning forward in your chair? Are you looking me in the eye? And is there passion? Is there that passion spark in your eye? So I'm going to illustrate with this one guy that I've worked with. And when he says, and he did get hired, God, what a great guy. I think about him. When he says, why do you want to become a firefighter? I want to help people, but here's what I mean by that. In my off time, I volunteer at a needle exchange in one of the worst parts of Vancouver. And it was working that needle exchange that actually had me realizing I wanted to help to a much deeper level. And I work at that needle exchange and want to help people at a deeper level because I lost my brother to a drug overdose. So when I say I want to help people, it's from the very fiber of my being. That's the point that I get you to, right? It's not, I just want to help people. It's like, why are you here?
Coming this March 27th through the 29th, 2022 in Savannah, Georgia, is the first Public Safety Business Summit, a program specifically created for organizations that serve first responders. What you will experience is a high level of networking and collaboration among like-minded leaders who are in the business of serving first responders. What you won't get are a series of boring lectures with no interactivity, ridiculous golf outings that are only appealing to a few attendees, or a couple of retreaded subjects that you can hear at any credit union league event that are just thrown into the curriculum. We offer an engaging agenda where attendees even help to determine the content during the actual conference based on their unique needs. If you run a business, a credit union, or a nonprofit that specifically serves first responders, then the Public Safety Business Summit is for you. For more information, go to www.policecreditunions.com or call 331-300-9889. We hope to see you in Savannah on March 27th, 28th, and 29th of 2022.
So this is the mistake that most coaches make, is they feed them Pablo. They don't challenge them. They are not available. I think that's a huge mistake. I am constantly getting in trouble with my operations manager, who is also my fiance, who I mentioned earlier. I'm constantly getting in trouble because you've got to stop giving them so much time. And this is not about me getting a pat on the back end. I just think it's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I only just asked a couple of my clients after well over a year of pretty deep work for another, hey, can you re-up on the program? I'm constantly making myself available. Text, face to face, Zooms, way beyond what I outline in my program. I do book research on them. For them, and send them Amazon recommendations based on where they're at and what might help them. I think that's maybe, now that I think about it, I never thought about this before. So I really appreciate the question.
Sure.
I think that's maybe what other coaches don't typically do is here's my program and we're going to check those boxes. And at the end of it, right. So we see you later. And that's the fire service, any of the first response businesses, professions are all about just making the world better, right? Well, I think that automatically, by definition, should have you getting away from check the box style coaching.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, that is an excellent answer. Even though you said you don't feel like or think you're an entrepreneur, I give you kudos, because at the end of the day, and I mentioned this to my new friend Sarah Hall at Talus Ridge in the last episode, who went from dispatcher to running a business, that at the end of the day, all entrepreneurship is seeing a problem and solving it, seeing a need and filling it. And you saw a need particularly in British Columbia, not only there, but in two different countries, and you filled it. And I will also give you kudos. I always mention and joke, I only have a few talents, but the ones I have are really, really strong. Fortunately, one of them was not being a firefighter, so I decided not to do that. And I did not have a good answer for that. Why do you want to do this? Which is one of the reasons why. But even in my 20s, that was one smart decision I did make.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I don't necessarily call myself a coach myself, but I do consulting and so forth. And one thing that I found that has made my clients raving fans of working with them is what I call the value add. Is if somebody needs 20 minutes of my time or a quick email, I just do it. Granted, if they ask me to do something and it takes an hour and a half of my time, I may charge them for an hour. But if it's just an email here, hey, I just want to toss this off you. To me, that's the value add. It's not going to end up in the invoice. It's not going to end up, it's not checking the box, as you said, which I think was a perfect example. That's the value add of working with me. And I think that coaches in general that don't understand the value add, that little something extra that people didn't expect, probably aren't coaches for very long, or they just churn through clients, customers, however you want to call them, to the next person that they kind of give just enough to and continue to have some cash flow in a business.
Yeah.
My thoughts.
No, and I totally agree. And quite frankly, from a business perspective, it is it's something that I would probably need to address, as much as I am driven by care and wanting that end result of them wearing a badge. As much as I want that, got to keep the lights on in order to do it for people for a number of years, right? And so there is that. But again, it's one of my failings.
Yeah.
So.
Well, as one of my favorite authors ever, Stephen Covey, often said, no margin, no mission. You can't help anybody if you can't keep the lights on. But yeah, a little bit off the cuff. I know we're going a little bit longer, but
That's totally fine.
We're having fun and we're having a damn good conversation. Do you think that in your work with not only Fire Edge, but being a mentor and or coach over the years, that there's been more value in helping people find themselves and understanding that this job is not for them, than really, really honing the folks that were always meant for this job anyway?
I think I understand your question. And I'm sorry if I don't. And so cut me off if I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, let me be more
Um,
concise.
sure, okay.
Is there more value in helping the people realize that they're not cut out for this job and making sure that they don't wind up as
Right.
being a firefighter than, really honing the folks that were meant for this job anyway?
That's, and it's really, I've been faced obviously more with honing people that really
Sure.
want this job, but uh, being thankfully blessed with a solid amount of honesty, I've had no problem saying to people, I don't think this is your gig. So as we peel away the onion while we're working through that process, that's my program. And while things are getting revealed, it's like, yeah, I don't think this is really your thing.
Yeah.
And so I think there's huge value in that. Absolutely. Because it means they are going to go out and they will find that thing that is eventually the right thing for them. People get enamored with, again, wearing the cool pants.
Yeah.
I joke about that, but they get so starry-eyed around fire and police and wanting that job that they're not regarding what's really residing in their heart. They just want the badge or the shield.
Yeah.
They want to wear the cool pants, like I keep saying. So I think there's huge value. So which one is more valuable? I think they're apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But wow, that's a really good question.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
gonna
Well,
have me.
every once in a while, as an interviewer, I ask a good question. I've only been doing this for decades. But
Well, you've done this once or twice. You've done this once or twice.
But yeah, going back to my real personality, when you find out that they're not cut for the job, do you do it in kind of a paternal, let's break it down easily, or do you tell them that you're really a jagoff and you probably should be cooking fries or something instead? Will you get out of my face?
Well, there's been a couple of jagoffs, so I have no problem at all saying, look, you're kind of a knucklehead, and this is just right. And I'm sorry. I mean, if you give me that,
Right.
I'm more professional than that, but
I'm sure you are. I'm not.
but sometimes when people kind of they poke the bear a little bit too much,
Yeah.
which is my profession, this is my love, this is my passion, and you are getting into it, essentially revealing to me that you just want to wear the cool pants, and you're kind of being an ass while you're revealing this. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you're an ass.
Yeah.
I don't think this is your thing. On the other hand, there are people that one fantastic candidate that I had is this young lady who was only with me for a short time because of this, and she wanted to be a firefighter pretty much everywhere. And then she went, no, wait a minute, Vancouver area. Well, wait a minute, no, this one department. I said, so why just that one department? Said, well, this, that, and the other thing, that's not really the important part. But she got passed over for one application process, and the next one wasn't going to be for another year or so. I said, is this really, really, really what you want? She says, I really don't know. And so I took a more paternal approach with her, because that's what was called for. Right. Yeah. Going back to this being a business, really any good businessman, there is no canned approach to managing people, right? It is every person that walks in the door has a different history, a different story. They're dealing with different emotions just generally, or that day. And so you need to be savvy enough to work on the balls of your feet, and either take that paternal approach or kind of cuff the knuckle dragger on the back of the head and say, this is not your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's a great story. And I'm having a great conversation with you, but to kind of begin wrapping it up, because I know you want, if you either need to get back to work or get back to that great fiance that you keep telling us about, both of which I completely understand. One of the last questions, if not the last question, for those folks that may be watching or listening to this that are interested in becoming a first responder, maybe it's a firefighter or EMT or some other type of public safety profession, is there a number one piece of advice that you would offer?
This was tough, and this was probably the one. question that you're posing that I really kind of had to chew on,
Yeah.
because my whole business is essentially advice, and so to come down to one piece of advice,
Mm.
it's like going to a nice restaurant and you ask the wine steward, so which one's your favorite? Well, look at the list. I've got 400 wines on there,
Yeah.
so it's tough. Um, but I think there's actually two pieces
Sure.
of advice that are key. One of them is, um, take the time to gain a deep understanding of the job. And I'm going to speak to fire. Obviously, that's my thing.
Sure.
Um, do the ride-alongs. Don't watch Station 19, right? um, Not to all those people that like Station 19, but or Chicago Fire, right? Uh, that one leans a little more towards the realistic, and incidentally, there's a few of those actors that are on there that have gone to fire academies a couple times
Right.
to maintain realism. So I like that. That's cool. Um, but but use the tools that you can to gain a deep understanding of what this job is, which is a job that is going to affect your family, your kids. Understand the finances behind it. Start understanding the toll that this job, quite frankly, takes. I know we've been joking a lot, and so I'm sorry if I'm turning a serious note, but it's
Not at all. Go ahead.
police and fire and EMS suicides it's rampant. And I struggled myself, actually. I'm new to the podcast world, but funny enough, I'm going to be going on a podcast here in a couple of weeks, a great one called The Firefighter Deconstructed.
Yeah, we have had Christy Warren on
Oh
this
my
show.
God, she's amazing.
Christy is awesome. And
Yes.
to your point, I was gonna wait until you were done, but since you made a call out to a friend of the show, Christy Warren from Firefighter Deconstructed, who's an awesome human being and an awesome
Yes.
podcaster, I will share. You could ask her this. You could tell her that Ken Bader said this, because we used to talk all the time when we were part of a mastermind, and I used to joke about how my wife and I watched 911, and her comment over and over, which we'll love. It's probably close to the Station 19 that you mentioned. Is she said, I can't even watch the commercials for that blank. It's so bad. So I kept challenging her. One day we're going to do this. I said, you know what? I want to watch one damn episode of 911 with you, and I want to put it on recording, and I want to find out a way to put it in the podcast.
I get so fired up about that, Ken. I actually reached out to the producers of Station 19 and basically said, what the hell are you doing? so I feel her pain, and that's funny. And I'll call you out on that when I talk to her. Absolutely. And man, am I lucky to be on that. Oh, she's a fantastic
awesome
person. So I'm very lucky to be on that. So she actually, I'm not shy in saying I struggled with PTSI. And I danced around that rabbit hole. I really did. But that's not really what I'm getting at with the advice. That the whole idea of the advice is gaining a deep understanding of what the job is. It is not throwing ladders and pulling hose any more than being a cop is nothing more than either pulling people over or pulling your gun. It's not. It's 10,000 things that you do every day. So there's that piece of advice. The next piece of advice, which I think is possibly the most important, and I think it's specific to fire, is we urge candidates to be a robust candidate. And while you and I may know the kind of the strict definition of robust, which in the end means strength, and that is important, there definitely need to be a level of robust as a candidate. Understand what resilient means, which is the ability to move and pivot and handle rejection and recoil and shape shift, right? And resilience is going to do you far better both in getting the job and in doing well in the job than just being robust. So that would be my number one piece of advice, is understand the difference between the two, and that more importance needs to be given towards being resilient.
Yeah. Great advice. Robust is definitely much more than a setting on my coffee machine, because that's how I like my Java. Get my last joke in here, but yeah, literally, I could talk to you for another hour. Love the vision and the premise behind Fire Edge, and
Thank you.
you're just a plain damn good conversation. So I'm envious of Christy. She'll get to talk to you next. But definitely, last question as we close
Yeah.
this out. How can those folks that really want and can use Fire Edge best find you out there?
If you just punch in Fire Edge Dave Robertson, and it'll drop you right onto that page. I work US and Canada. Thankfully, with all the remote work that we can do, I actually have a client in Salt Lake City, California, Ontario, British Columbia. So, and it looks like I'm going to get my first from Florida. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Yeah, had somebody reach out to me. So that's how they can find me. I'm going to throw a phone number out there if that's cool.
Go right ahead.
All right. 519, think about it, 519-384-3072. You can call me, you can text me. I promise I'm more tech savvy than what I just let on a couple minutes ago. And I'm not going to lose the opportunity before you sign off, Ken, to thank you for this opportunity. I think it's a great conversation too. Something tells me that if you and I ever met when I'm back down in California for coffee, it'd be a long cup of coffee. So I really, really appreciate you giving me the chance to kind of say my piece.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with you. It's my pleasure. And I will also add, for folks out there looking for Dave and Fire Edge, I found him through LinkedIn. He's very easy to find under Dave Robertson, Fire Edge. So take that advantage as well. Thanks, man. It was great having you on. A lot of fun. And if you want to have that cup of coffee, you could drive all the way to Savannah, Georgia in March and come to Public Safety Business Summit.
Yeah, I was interested when you mentioned that. I didn't even know that existed. What a great thing.
Well, we'll sell you, 5 registrations right now, on the show. Well, maybe later. But seriously, thank you so much for being on. I learned a lot. I know our listeners learned a lot as well. And to our listeners or viewers, thank you for either watching or listening to this episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we'll be back with you in about a week with another great guest. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by the POCUA. POCUA is a consortium of financial institutions serving law enforcement as well as other first responders and public safety professionals. To learn more about our association and to find one of our credit unions or service providers near you, go to www.policecreditunions.com. And always remember, if you aren't working with one of our POCUA credit unions, you're just banking with an institution that just so happens to serve first responders. As a public safety professional, you and your family deserve better. Find a POCUA credit union today.